How are you? How are you, and how can we help?
How am I doing? I'm grieving. And I feel a little shell-shocked from it because it's been coming a long time. Dad's ALS diagnosis is like a few months old. You know it's going to come to an end. And the last few weeks have been really, quite frankly, excruciating, watching my lion of a dad, become a person who couldn't throw his cards down when he was playing bid whist and couldn't, cook for us and couldn't scratch his nose, right? Couldn't manage his own feeding and elimination, just a lion of a man. So that's how I'm doing. I'm doing Daddy is gone. And it just feels so weird and hard. And also, everything you're supposed to do, you hope you'll do, you get to do if you know your parent is dying. Like, what a blessing that you get to have the talks and get to tell the stories and get to squeeze hands and get to answer the, Daddy whispers, where did you learn how to preach? How did you learn how to write that book? And this is the best. Like, I read every word in that book. And I love that book, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, dude, I told a little bit of smack on you. I told us a teeny tiny bit of smack on you, Dad. And he's like, it was all love. Like, it was all designed for love, and that's right. So that's how I feel. I want to say being here today is such a good thing. It was weird. I almost called in sick because I was feeling sick, right? You thought, yeah, I was like.
It's a hard Sunday for you to be here. I said, I think we might have to be prepared to pivot. Yeah. So if you needed to really take a day.
But I really needed y'all. That's what I'm wanting to say. I needed this Mishkan, this beautiful tabernacle that Josh has set for us. This community, my people, the hugs, my board, my friends. I needed you more than I needed to stay home. So I'm really glad I'm here. That's how I'm doing. Thank you. Thank you. This is a place where you can do and be. It really is, just as you are, as you come through the door. You're welcome. Your tears are welcome. Your anger is welcome. Your doubt is welcome. Girl, that sermon was fierce. Fierce sermon. Your fierce sermons are welcome. You're wrestling with the thing. Good God Almighty, could there be a better place where we can throw it down and figure it out what sticks and see what's left and what this gospel really has to say about us? I'm so glad I came. I would have watched you on TV, but this was better. This is much better.
I've been chosen to sort of guide this conversation this morning by these amazing humans, but feel free to interject, and we can take. I want to take this where the Spirit, as they say, wants to lead us this morning. But I loved. We talked upstairs about the connection. Last week, your sermon was about re-envisioning God. And it was important, and everybody needs to go, if you were here or you watched it, re-watch it, because it's time to re-envision God. And today, re-envisioning Jesus. Man, a few years ago, it would have been heretical to even think about questioning anything that Jesus ever did or said or whatever. And then you came in this morning and reminded us that, yeah, maybe he wasn't so perfect. And Jesus, because fully human, had bad days and did some bad things, said some really terrible things. So as we sort of take in what's happening in the world, and as we re-envision God and re-envision Jesus and re-envision church, we are each doing all the same work, but in different ways. Everybody probably knows generally what that is, but what I'd love is for each of us to succinctly describe sort of our version of that, raising imagination and fierce all the things and let's give a damn. I'd love for us to describe that and then I think the connections will sort of come out like that we're all doing the same thing, just in different, some people more in the church world, some more outside the church world, but it's all the same thing. So Amanda, could you just begin and what are you about? What is the purpose of your life and leadership?
Oh my gosh! Nick, Does anybody have lunch? That is a huge question. What is the purpose of my life in leadership?
1 minute. No, I'm
But
just
yeah,
kidding.
no. But I will focus on the raising imagination piece, because that kind of, those two words together, I love, and kind of came to me when I was thinking about what are the type of movements that I want to throw my energy behind. What are the type of questions that I want to ask together? What are the type of people that I want to be in conversation with? And who do I want to be learning from? So I'm interested in being a person in movement spaces that is asking questions that will hopefully raise our consciousness, a collective consciousness for a better world, with liberation lenses, with justice lenses. Faith is often a part of that, but it's often not. So it can be in a politics space, in a secular space, in a faith space. And I think it's important, I have 4 children, some of you know that, and so there's obviously a very clear raising of imaginations that happen in my very home, right? With like little people who are growing up. But more so than them just being raised in a home, they are raising Graham and my's imaginations and consciousness all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a real poignant story that I tell about how that kind of coalesced one day when I was talking to Zane, who was 3 at the time. We were gonna go to a gun rally, and I said, Zane, here's what this is about. What do you wanna write on your sign? And he just very simply said, why do you have a gun? And I was like, oh, that is actually the question, right? Like, why does anybody have a gun? It's not about background checks or bump stocks or whatever it is. It is, why are there guns, period. And in that moment, I was like, gosh, these young people can really be a catalyst and raise a collective imagination for all generations. So young people are absolutely a part of it in this movement where we can hopefully be part of some change that this world and this country needs.
That's beautiful, man.
Amazing.
Why do you have a gun? I almost broke up with God. I'll go there. I almost broke up with God as a young woman around the time I was 30-something. So this really powerful relationship. And the relationship broke up. And so there was a breakup in the relationship. I had a big fire. This was my second fire. I had a big fire where all the stuff I was moving across country burned to a crisp because the moving van went under some power lines. So I was like, break up with this person you're in love with, have this big fire, and before that, a car accident in which I almost died. And I kept trying to trace back, like the theodicy question, like, what in the heck? What in the hell? What happened? And the only thing I could trace back, the only thing I could think of where I had, quote, sinned, was that I had made love to my husband 2 weeks before we got married. I was like, did I not pray? No, I prayed. Did I pay my tithe? Yeah, I did. Was I a virgin? All the way until 2 weeks before the wedding. Was God mad because I had had sex with my fiance 2 weeks before the wedding? That is the only theological construct I could come up with for why I had these 3 big sufferings. Are you kidding me? That is what I learned as a girl child in my house. And sometimes I've told this story on a stage, and people look at me like, yeah, heifer, why did you have sex? Okay? Because, really, it's like, I think that might have been why. I don't know, maybe so, right? So,
They got that children's Bible.
that's right, they got that children's Bible, and they got in a chastity belt and everything. And so, what I began a journey around seminary, 30, was what is this God really like? And what do I want from God? What's this relationship? And you've heard me say I want to have a grown-up relationship with a grown-up God. I just was like, I don't want to break up with God. So a kind of a hermeneutic of suspicion that led me to seminary, that led me to middle, that led me to writing, reading, teaching, into the Jewishness of Jesus, really, like the ways Christianity created this person, this empire dude with blonde hair and whatnot, to oppress me and my people. And I've just broken free, and I feel like the work I'm doing here at Middle, blessed by my board, the public theology, is to construct, not just deconstruct, but to construct, to really build theologies that are life-giving and fierce. And it is, to me, about love, period. Everything else is commentary. God, love neighbor, love self. Everything else is commentary. So my book, my writing, my public-facing work, and the work in here is to help our little people, to help all of our people love a God who loves us back, to dismantle the violence and the patriarchy and the racism and the fascism and the anti-Semitism that's baked into church, and just get to love.
It's beautiful. And I'll be brief, and I'm already seeing, I already know the connections that I want to sort of highlight, but I spent most of my upbringing until 7, 8 years ago, deeply entrenched in ridiculous, violent, backward theological circles. I was raised in super right-wing fundamentalism. This whole sex thing. I mean, that was just the tip of the iceberg, and it was just so many rules, so much made-up garbage that kept us always wondering, am I messing? Is that thing that I just did because God didn't like what I did earlier in this thing that just happened? And trying to make all these connections, and really just trying to spend every single day not enjoying life but appeasing God. And that lasted for many, many years. In fact, until I don't know if some of you know of the name John Piper, a very well-known, destructively theological teacher, very well-known. And I worked with John. And so, 11 years ago, I was spreading just nonsensical, horrific theology still. And so I have a lot. So I kind of came to, something happened in 2015, 2016 that sort of got a lot of people off their seats. Donald Trump and all of that stuff happening, it really changed me dramatically. And I started Let's Give a Damn. And at the time, it was just a podcast. I just wanted to have conversations with people like you and people that were thinking differently. I had come from the nonprofit world, so I wanted to help people realize there's a million different ways to give a damn. And by give a damn, I simply mean helping people live absurdly intentional and ethical lives. I'm all about absurd intentionality in everything that we do and everything we say, the things we eat, the things we drink, where we go, how we get there. All of those things matter. And it seems like those things matter for you as well. And so as 2016 sort of happened, something that I never thought would happen, and then the following years, the riots and the homophobia and the misogyny and all the things that sort of came out from the people that I used to be a part of, my conviction grew stronger to spend the rest of my days helping people get out of that. And in the process, I had a more recent almost breakup with God. I mean, it was 4 or 5 years ago. I was trying everything I possibly could to leave my faith. I did not want it anymore. This is garbage. It's nonsense. These people are... I didn't think there was a better version of it. I didn't see it. And thankfully, I've stayed in, still trying to figure it out. I don't have a damn thing figured out, but I'm still trying to figure it out. But I believe there's something there. You have taught me that. People have taught me that as well. Meeting Jacqui was just a really helpful part of my life because it helped me realize that there are right ways to look at the world. We have permission to re-envision God and Jesus in this whole thing, and we're not heretics if we do. And so one of the things, here's where I want to jump into. Thank you both for sharing. I'm going to shut up in a second, but I want to tell a quick story that I heard. Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, one of the best songwriters, one of the best performers, his son was 6. I just thought of this as I was like sort of thinking about our stuff. I heard him tell the story. His son was 6 when 9/11 happened. And as many parents did, they went and picked up their kids and brought them home and were trying to figure out how to explain stuff. So he's fumbling through what happened and, this is tragic and that. And he asked his 6-year-old son, what do you think about all that? And his 6-year-old son sits there for a second and finally says, I think everything in the world breaks. And Jeff says, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? And his son, again, 6, says, I think that's a very, 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 very good thing. And Jeff says, why? And the boy says one of the most simply profound things I've heard in a long time. He said, because if everything in the world didn't break, bad things would last forever.
He's hired.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, where is this kid? I mean, he's a little older now, but had some things going on back then. If everything in the world didn't break, bad things would last forever. And so as we build middle, as we live our lives outside these 4 walls, as we re-envision God and Jesus, as we raise imaginations, as we compel people to be fiercely loving and fiercely faithful and so on, how does that shape how we live in our day-to-day lives? That's what I really want to get to, because it's easy to come here and get excited. The singing, we got Tracy Chapman on the stage today singing, like there's just incredible to come in here into these spaces, to go to conferences, to attend online gatherings. But day to day, when the doors close and we're out there and our parents pass and we lose jobs and there's not enough money to pay the rent and we don't have friends and we're lonely, how does it play out there?
Yeah, I'm going to go first. I overheard a snippet of Laura and Amanda's the kind of border space thing. I'm a Winnicottian kind of psychologist. And I think about the border as a place of creativity. The border crossing as a place of mestizaje, maybe Spanish speakers would say, of mixing up, of dancing, of choreography, of determining something new. And I love that space. So I would say in our everyday life, like if I had one thing I wanted to make sure happened in my life as a pastor, is that everybody, not me, but all the people would think of themselves as playing on a border, playing, experimenting, diving into, creating other. What's it like to go over there to the place where I'm not comfortable? What's it like to go over there to Judaism if I'm a Christian, Islam if I'm a Jew? What's it like to think about Spanish as a culture to learn, not a language to learn? What's it like to be in a messy space? Because the messy space is creative. And I would have said, be a theologian in residence in your own life, which sounds really lofty, but I want to break it down to you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of your ethical life. You're in charge of your ethical imagination. You are in charge of how to be a good human. Be good. What does good mean? It's your job, not my job. It's your job. It's your job to read, to think, to experiment, to play with the best self I could conjure for myself in the world is what I'm going to do this morning. Today, I'm going to read the thing, say the thing, try not to say the thing, try not to kill somebody. One of my siblings grieves differently than some of the rest of us, and it's really rough. So every day, I have a choice of how to be in relationship to that sibling. I could just blow my mind and just be like whatever, reactive and la la la, but truly, I don't want to. I want to be my best self this day. I'm in charge of me. And that is not selfish. If everybody's in charge of them, then we'll all be doing a better job, right? So we won't lie, we won't steal, we won't covet, we won't F up the environment, because on the planet is your responsibility to be a better person today than you were yesterday. That is what I think it boils down to. And our books help us, our sermons help us, our music help us, our ethical constructs, our mommies teach us, but ultimately the 6-year-old boy was born knowing how to be good. And we want to just keep teasing that out. Does that resonate?
That makes
Yeah.
total sense. And that's a great toss over to Amanda. If our, because I wasn't raised that way, children are born
Good.
and we mess them up. Parents, cousins, uncles, aunts, school teachers,
TV.
pastors, priests, right? The billboards they see, the advertisements they see, that's what's messing them up, but they are born fundamentally ready to take on the challenge of life. Raising imagination.
Goodness.
You do a great job. Like,
You
I love
too.
whenever your children, I mean, I like my children as well, and they do a great job, but when your children, they do a great job.
Thank God.
But when, you know, for Message for All Ages, your kids are always ready to
If
just
the
come with
psychologist
fire.
approves an answer, I'm like, yes, we're doing
that's right.
something
Yeah,
right.
that's- so how do we do that better?
Thank you, Nick. That's very kind. We are learning every day. From Bluey. Anybody watch Bluey? Bluey's a great show. And Graham's got a
Graham.
Rad Dad Bluey shirt on. See, we love Bluey. You know, I think we stay curious. We definitely stay curious and we stay open. You know, a perfect example of how we do this every day is when I'm hanging out with my roommate and I see a pretty Bible, I ask about it. And I don't imagine that, like, her life of faith is only something that happens on Sunday mornings. And I don't imagine that what's in that Bible doesn't actually matter. So, of course, I was actually curious because I wanted that Bible, and there's not many good children's Bibles. Jacqui may or may not be writing one.
I wrote a Bible.
But I also was a little bit intentional in that, right? Like, I wanted Amy to know, because she's super progressive. She's we are aligned on a lot of the same things. And I wanted her to see that what's in that Bible matters. And so, we have a conversation, and then she asks me, well, you know what? Actually, I'm teaching Sunday school. What curriculum should I use? And I was like, well, I've got a few for you, And so maybe that's starting like a little conversation, a little something. And what I should have said also, even though I wanted to act like I knew a little something, when she said, you're the theologian, is exactly what Jacqui just said. No, you're the theologian.
Yeah.
We're all the theologians. We actually are all in charge of figuring out what any text that we take as holy has to, means in our everyday life. And what would that have kind of pushed back to her have looked like? I'm also thinking, as we're sitting here, a lot about just movements, because that's sort of what we're talking about too, and who's in and who's out and where are borders. And Jacqui and I have been in so many messy conversations around, like, who do we align ourselves with? And align is a scary word, but that's kind of sometimes what it boils down to. It could be the Women's March of 16, and when anti-Semitism breeds in there, or Louis Farrakhan, breeds in there, relations to whomever. Shane Claiborne is coming, and he tweeted something gay this week. Does Shane still come? Does he not come? Natalie was a big part of that conversation. This stuff is messy. This summer, it was, wow, there's this big gun abolition thing going, but maybe this person doesn't really, it's messy. It's always messy. And we're thinking about who to do this work with. I've been reading a book that I highly recommend to you all. I think you've read it, Nick. I don't know if you've read it, Jacqui, The Persuaders. Anybody read it? Say the author's name, because I'll butcher
Anand
it.
Giridharadas, from here in New York, amazing book.
And in it, the first couple chapters actually talk about exactly this. Who do we do movements with? And he puts this really, he's quoting, I think it's Ross, I can't remember her first name, but a woman who basically has thought about this her whole life and says, there's all kinds of different percentages that we align with people, and maybe it's okay if we're working with someone who we only align with 75%. Yeah. And maybe it's okay if we're working with someone who we only align 50% with. Outright fascists, leave them, right? Like, outright bigots, leave them. But maybe we do need to be open to that border. Maybe we do need to be able to approach that border a little more if we can all agree on what are our end goals. Natalie and I talk about this a lot. Does the journey matter? Like, what does the journey matter if our end goals are actually the same? So I just put a lot of things out there as well, but it's kind of what I'm sitting with.
No, I think that's really beautiful. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful because Jacqui's involved with Starts With Us, an incredible organization that at first bugged me because I'm not a fan of a lot of the let's come to the table with people we don't agree with. A lot of them do it and they ignore very important issues and topics at the expense of like coming to the table so we can talk things out. I think Starts With Us does it really well. And I told the CEO, who's a friend of mine, I was like, when we did a podcast together, I was like, this is honest. I'm being honest. I want to work with people that align with me 98% of the time. So I know that this is a safe space when I bring people in and we do stuff together. But there's too much work to do. There's too much at stake to not figure out who we can build these movements with, who we can build these healing theologies with, and how we can show those to the world, right? I mean, you said, well, one of you two, I was thinking of this quote by Brian Andreas: anyone can slay a dragon, try waking up every morning and loving the world all over again. That takes a hero, right? Like anyone can slay a dragon, but getting up in this world each and every day and committing to go out there and love as many people and as many places, as many things as we can in all the ways that we can, that's difficult.
It is difficult, and just to pick up a word about, pick up boundaries again, maybe I'll just borders and boundaries. I want us to do both of those, right? There's something about the messiness of the border that changes us if we let it, right? That really, we do become more like the other when we get to the border. We learn about them, we sense them, they change us, they etch something on us. And at the same time, I think love requires boundaries. I have learned, my little brother, Roderick, I hope you'll watch this one. My youngest brother is 50. I'm 14 years older than he is. And I love him, and we have always have had a good relationship. But you don't really know someone that's 14 years younger than you when you live in different cities, right? Not no. What I have learned about him in these last weeks, months with our dad sick, I'm so in love with him. I'm so deeply in awe of him. And this is a boundary-having child. You are not crossing his boundaries. He's clear about who he is. He's clear about where it begins and middles and ends. He's clear about what he's not going to do. And he'll tell you in a very special way if you let him, and he'll show you. And I think I want to be a big girl like he's a big boy. Like, this is where it is. Period. And I'm just like, no mincing of words, truth. What I want to say right now, because these y'all are my people. Sometimes church people think boundaries are mean, right? I can't call all the people. I can't do all the things. I can't be everywhere all at once. I can't and survive it. And as I've gotten to be 64, I'm clearer about that. And some people don't like me as well as they used to. But it's good. Love also has to have a no in it.
No is a full sentence.
No, period. No. Yeah.
Can I jump in with a question?
Please.
And I don't even know what time it is, so I hope somebody's
We're
watching that.
coming up.
We're coming up,
Yep.
okay. Well, Nick, I know you're also kind of working this out too in real time, but you mentioned how when you went with a certain organization, you were like, I only want to work with people who are a certain amount aligned or whatever. And I think it might be helpful if you would talk a little bit about your own kind of coming to a totally different theological space. Because I imagine that somebody who was totally opposed to your theology was like, I'm going to work with Nick.
Yeah, I mean, yes, many patient people. As I changed and progressed, really starting 10, 11 years ago, it took a few years to really figure out that I was changing. I didn't realize it was happening, but it was happening. It was coming up in my marriage, in our family, as situations would come up. Like I didn't think that last year. I've never thought that before, and now I'm okay with it. Again, I've said this, I joke all the time about how a few years ago, things I believe now firmly and would give my life for, a few years ago, I would have called current day me, a heretic for questioning whether Jesus should or should not have said that thing to that woman, right? Like those types of things. And yes, there were both religious and non-religious people, right? People that were progressive Christians and otherwise, and also people that weren't part of any faith group, that were so patient to have long conversations over a cigar, over a beer, over a coffee, early in the morning, late at night, questioning who I was becoming, because it was happening. It was already happening. We were already on a journey of coming out of those toxic theologies into a much more the inclusive theology that I'm experiencing now.
I think we need more of these stories.
think
And
we
I'd
do
love
too.
to hear what you think about that, because I think the change that people have in their lives, especially in our culture of, fast posting and, well, this is who I am, it seems like we are not approachable if that's the way we've always been, and yet we've all been
100%.
evolving. Perfect example, we were home last week with my mom, and she's like a staunch Democrat now, right? Like, is on city council, progressive Democrat, amazing. And Graham rightly asked, hey, Willow, does anybody ever ask you about your evolution politically? Because you used to be Democrat, or used to be Republican. And she was like, I haven't voted Republican in a long time. And it was like, but Mom, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Actually, this is a powerful story for you
This
to
is how
talk
people
about.
change,
This is how people
by
change.
realizing that you can change and it's okay on the other side.
And so I think,
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. That's our work here, maybe. Like, that's part of
It
a healing theology. But I think that there is power in letting people show, like, Jesus changed. It's in the Bible.
Oh, I'm no Laura and Tom. I'd be over there whispering about the girl they met when I first started working at Middle Church. I said, you might be whispering about the woman they hired when I started working at Middle Church. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What's your story? What happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So what's being said that you can't hear is that people are also swinging to the conservative side, and they are in our family. There's been some of my siblings who used to be Wild's children have become Jesus-y people, and I think partly it's because there's a kind of safety or something, right?
Yeah.
Like there's almost like an insurance policy. I better get it together and get in this camp of God so that nothing happens to me, or if it does happen to me, I'm going to heaven. Literally, I have a friend who will say, I need to make up with you because I'm going to go to hell if we stay fighting with each other. I mean, so
Wow.
there is a little bit of, I'm going to use a theological word, wacko-ness happening in
Very
the
theological.
culture because we are in such stress. We are in such a time of conflict and foment that a lot of people will regress, is what I'm trying to say, to a childhood type, concrete thinking, right? Black, white, this is what it is, because it feels safer. Does that make sense? Yeah. I hope middle is a place where we can experiment and try new things.
Listen, let's end with it. We're going to do one question or two in the room, and then Ty, you're still online watching things. So if anyone types something in the chat, text me, and we'll do that as the wrap-up question. We'll take one or two. But what did you just say? I had something I was going to say.
Well, I said I hope middle is a place where
Yes.
experimenting is
So
safe.
one of the things I've been doing,
not remembering
as
the
we've been
thing.
figuring out how to do online church better, over the past few weeks, I've been meeting with lots and lots and lots of people from all over the country. Middle is saving lives. Middle is a place. It's easy to take it for granted because it's here in New York, in East Village, but there are people, and there's nothing like Middle, but there are other progressive churches within a stone's throw of this building, right? So we don't have that issue here as much. But there are people living in South Carolina, in West Texas, in Dayton, in Georgia,
Canada.
Dayton, Ohio, like all over the place, that they don't have this, and this is a lifesaver for them. So Middle is
Amen.
doing that.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Do we have a couple questions? We have time for a couple questions in the room.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing today. I guess we'll take Nick's cue and ask maybe a difficult question, but maybe not, if we start at the beginning. We'll go back to the beginning. So this scripture has been probably one of the most challenging ones in the Bible for me. And I love what you're talking about around sort of like the growth that happens at the border. And I always sort of think about, I guess, Amanda, you framed it differently today around Jesus being on like a journey with his faith and with his ministry. And this text to me was always like a tension point of, did Jesus sin or not? Like we were told he's perfect, he was without sin, but like, this feels a little bit like he missed the mark in that moment. And so in my head, I've often wrestled with, oh, was he wrong, but he didn't sin because he ultimately did the thing? Was he not? Was he just on a journey? Like, how do you characterize this moment in Scripture with kind of what we've been told about the sort of, infallible perfection of Jesus?
Ooh. I love that question. You said miss the mark, and the Greek word for sin, no, but yeah, right. So hamartia. I mean, that's what it is. Miss the mark. The Greek word is miss the mark. So yes, he missed the mark. And I think that, let's say it this way, the people who put the canon together, Catherine is one of my favorite canon talkers, the people who put the biblical canon together could have left that story out. They just could have left it out. Like, they left out a lot of stuff, right? They left out a whole bunch of stuff.
They left out a lot of stuff, right, Natalie?
They left out a whole lot of stuff, Natalie would say. And I like to think that they left that in because we need to know the humanity of Jesus. If this is a divine human smash-up, this is a human moment, culturally conscripted, absolutely a man of his times, absolutely a marginalized person marginalizing somebody else, totally oppressing another person because he was oppressed. That makes him heroic to me. Long time ago, I let go of, he was testing her faith because he wasn't. He was growing himself. And I think, oh my God, thank you, God, for giving us a rabbi, a teacher, a beloved Rabboni, who happens to be divine, that we can model after because we can say, I also messed up yesterday, I'm sorry. Let me do better today.
That's beautiful. And also, Ivan, we talk a lot about how we are God bearers, right? Like we are all made in Imago Dei. Yep. And if that's true, God knows I'm not perfect, right? And Jesus also in Imago Dei. Yeah. And that's messy, right? Both at the same time, fully human, fully divine. What does that mean? And Jacqui, I actually want to take something that you said maybe even a little further. I do think it was intentional that it was kept in the Bible, but I don't know if the folks who decided to keep it knew all the ways that it would ultimately be revealed and heard and said, because they might have been like, yeah, he's calling her a Canaanite, like, let's call her a Canaanite. That wasn't cool, they didn't have to do that. That wasn't a thing when that was written. They were trying to show that she was like really, opposed. And so, and while I say that, I don't think it diminishes the beauty and the marvelousness and the wonderness of God that it stayed. Because for whatever reason, we're going to wrestle with it and come out with it and be able to use it. Yeah.
One more real quick.
Yep.
And Ivan, because you're a Bible nerd, that the construct of all-knowing, all-powerful perfection is something that is constructed along the way. When Jesus stops being just Jewish, I think there's a polemic in there to justify the Son of Godness, and therefore the virginity of Mary, and like all that kind of stuff, all goes in the same pot to make him pure enough to be Son of God, as opposed to human enough to be human. It's a little dance going on in there. Catherine, give me a smile on that.
That's beautiful. I have stuff to say, but I won't. You all two covered it. And for the sake of time, I will say this. I grew up in these circles that they had 1,000 different ways to talk when Jesus grew in wisdom. They had 1,000 different angles and ways to tell that story where Jesus is still perfect, but also growing in wisdom. But how beautiful is it? Like that sort of theology that I grew up in and will never go back to, how beautiful is it to now be in a place where we can identify more with, right? Because you read that story and you're like, yeah, I've done that. Maybe I haven't compared that person to a dog, but I've thought it. And we've thought much worse than that. And now we have someone that we can talk back and forth with. We can be in relationship with versus, wait, if Jesus is perfect, well, we're supposed to be like Jesus and we're called to. That's an impossible situation we put ourselves in. And no wonder every single day we are just shaming ourselves.
And there's scandal after scandal of religious leaders in churches.
Right.
Because
How much more freedom would we have if pastors and priests and leaders and lay people and members could all just be honest about how bad we're feeling, about this thing that we want to do that we don't think we should do, but we want to do it, and all the things. We would be in a much better spot if we weren't trying to be perfect, therefore repressing so many parts about ourselves that are just fine all by themselves. Well, we can't do that because we're reading literal interpretations of the Bible. It's just a more beautiful way to live.
Facts.
There's one, we'll end with one question online. Sorry, we are out of time. Miranda asks, and this is a good one. This is a big one. I'm still mad at Christianity. How do I get past it? Or do you get past it?
The answer to that is please stay mad as long as you need to.
Yes.
Because that's real. And Christianity, in quotes, the religion that has become Christianity, hurts a lot of people every day. And if we're angry at it, it's because the space between what we know can be and the space that isn't is grief, is disappointment, is anger. Appropriate. Please don't feel bad about feeling bad about Christian. Find a community, this one maybe, where there's space to play and grow and learn and change and believe about God what you want, whether you label it as Christian or what. Call it love and do it. And don't feel bad about feeling bad. Is that, yeah. Y'all got something to add to
Amen.
that?
I have nothing to add to that.
Well, Richard
I'm mad. I'm angry.
Richard's in the room and he has a question. Richard,
Okay,
you have
we
you
will
have a
finish with
question?
this, yes.
We'll start with Richard.
I also love that I'm not good enough with the Bible, but I'm sure there's somewhere else where Jesus says, "Be ye therefore perfect." I think it's after
Yeah.
a parable.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk about that one in the next talk, Richard.
Sometimes we have illusions about what we are, maybe.
No, I mean, I think, just to be, because someone's going to write us a bunch of nasty notes about how we're,
don't say
what
what
we're
I
doing
said.
right now. No, I like what you said. Listen, this is called theology. It's called wrestling with the text. And that's what Jesus was doing too. Be therefore perfect as your Father is perfect in heaven. Okay. A goal.
Thank you, Jacqui, Amanda, Natalie, Ben. You've thrown me a lifeline.
Oh,
In Christianity.
thank you, baby.
Here has helped me reach for that lifeline, and I want to
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you.
You want to
I'm
wrap
gonna
up
wrap.
and talk to
I'm
them
gonna,
and
I'm
talk
gonna,
to
I'm
them?
gonna wrap and talk to y'all and y'all. One, thank you for staying. Hi, little ones, I've missed you. Thank you for staying. A conversation like this is a conversation. I wish we had more time. We're gonna have more of these sermon talk backs and have you talking with us. The word keeps becoming flesh because we keep talking. If you're online, the fact that you're online still is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and we love you so much. We are still becoming. That's what I want to say. We are still becoming the children of God. We are still becoming human on the planet. We are in process. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to the Holy. Thanks be to light that we get to keep becoming together. Amen.
Amen.